Okay, I see the timer's going on here, so it seems like we can kind of get started. I'm excited. Thank you guys for being here. Don't worry about too much about the last quiz as much and everything. We'll go over it in class. That's what happens when Thanksgiving break. It's like you lose everything. You're like, I don't know what the Civil War is about. Who's Lincoln? I don't know who that guy is. So that's probably what's happened to you guys. You just got to reorient yourselves to finish strong the last 3 weeks here. Jamie asked a good question here. She says, will the Spanish American War be on a quiz tomorrow? How much should I devote my time for as far as that is preparing tomorrow? I probably won't be able to get to it tomorrow, even though we have a lot that we're going to cover a lot in this next like 30 minutes. I might do an introduction and we'll get there about American imperialism, but it probably will not be a quiz, some questions on there. Okay. Probably what's going to happen tomorrow, just because some people are failing on the my favorite people, William Jennings Bryan, the Grangers, Populists, might be one or two questions about that. But we'll go start class tomorrow, beginning with that. All right. Today, so excited. I know a lot of you guys becoming engineers, doctors, lawyers, veterinarians, something else, mad scientists like that. So archaeologists, archaeologists. All right. But as far as humanities, there might be one or two of you get into some good humanities courses. And part of good humanities courses is exploring 19th century, early 20th century civil rights. All right. You ad infinitum about all the modern civil rights. But now we're going to go to the foundation of civil rights. Quickly, we'll start a little list. Every time we do this, every time I'm having Apush 1.5, I'm getting ready for the test in May. All right. Everything that you do, you're preparing yourself. And I can already see everybody setting the table up, good for them that they'll be ready. They will not have to cram. Some students will be asking you questions like, hey, could you explain a terror to me? Hey, could you explain I don't know, Bacon's Rebellion, and you already have it down. That will be most of you. So, civil rights today in Apush 1.5, for the most part, 1865 to 1896. My first question, what years kind of mark those dates for civil rights here in the 19th century? What can you think of as 1865? If you can try make a deduction here. I'm not even looking for a passage or something. It's the end of an event. End of the Civil War. Thank you. End of the Civil War. 1896, something I said that we're not going to talk too extensively about. Really, you see another low point in civil rights. We saw this low point in 1857 with slavery. Now in 1896, you see another low point decided by a branch of our government. Plessy versus Ferguson. Very good. Plessy versus Ferguson. And you know that since first grade, separate was equal. But you know the reality of that. Now, for a list of review for your heads, and again, and what you already kind of know and you want to put in your mind, I'm not looking for dates. All right. Besides people, what are things, events that's kind of affecting African Americans between 1865 and 1896? And we'll just go through a little quick list here in a way. Nick, Jim Crow laws, and that would be more when? The 1860s or the 1880s? 80s, very good. Because in the 1860s, post-Civil War, we get more, not the Jim Crow laws, but the black codes. That's excellent. That was just excellent. Just to know that kind of, change over time from, again, the black codes to Jim Crow. And it's going to be validated with Plessy versus Ferguson. It's going to be validated. Anything else here? I even heard somebody say this there, and they talked about like, well, during this time too, you have this going on. Like you had this between 65 and 77. Reconstruction. Thank you. All right. And for the most part, a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's a failure, it's a failure. But what's going on during Reconstruction? And don't worry, maybe, you're thinking like, oh, I don't want to say this because I don't know if it happened during Reconstruction. But what were some of the things, again, that was being done, some of the things that was counteracted? You might want to like throw out some things in Reconstruction. Like, go ahead. Voting rights, all right? With the what amendment? 15th Amendment. Should know that. Should know that at home. Got to know the Civil War amendments. Have to know them. All right. Just like we're coming up on the progressive amendments, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. You're going to have to know the 13th, 14th, and 15th. 15 amendments, voting rights. All right. So response, sometimes that's called franchise when you get voting rights. When you're getting disenfranchised, what do you think that might mean? What are they trying to do? Take away voting rights. Give me the examples you learned from first grade about being disenfranchised. Go ahead, Jessica. Literacy tests, the poll taxes, grandfather clause, all that's going on here as a response to that. What's the 14th Amendment? Citizenship. Thank you. All right. It really is citizenship. It is that equal protection of the law. No states can deny you equal protection under the law. What's going to happen to that amendment in the 1880s? What's going to happen to that amendment? Or what do you think is going to happen to that amendment and everything? What's going to happen to the Civil Rights Act in 1875? What's going to happen to that amendment in the 1880s? How is it going to be interpreted? Go ahead, Jamie. What do you want to say? They're saying. Okay, you're not saying much at all. You're just like, narrating by yourself and everything. You're like, oh, pick somebody else, please, because I don't have this. I know, exactly. Oh, man. 17 or 71? My memory's fading like that. Let's let's do this, and hopefully you guys will follow up at home too. In the 1880s, and in particular, and I'll give you the year, but don't worry about almost a year. The Supreme Court decides in 1883 that really that you can, the 14th Amendment really does not apply to the states. Meaning, when they passed the Civil Rights Act of 1875 that says you cannot discriminate, like in trains, hotels, you know, movie theaters, restaurants, it says, oh, that should hold up. Well, the Supreme Court says, no. You know what the 14th Amendment says? No states can deny you equal protection of the law. A hotel owner, a private business can.
Only protected by government violation.
What? So, yeah.
Does that mean that only if the government discriminates against
The federal government. The federal government. Yeah, the federal government. They're saying like states seem like, and you know what's going to happen as you guys, it leads up to a Plessy decision in 1896 that they're going to be able to segregate. All right, go ahead, JB. In 1883, they said that the 14th Amendment only says no states can deny you equal protection of law. But a business, a private owner, a hotel can, it does not apply to them. And it really just tears down the 14th Amendment. In 1896, I will say this about Plessy. what does it mean to dissent? What does it mean that you're dissenting? If you're a judge or a justice on the Supreme Court and you're dissenting, what do you think that means? If you're offering a dissenting opinion, this is the only judge that actually offered a dissenting opinion. What do you think it might mean? You're going against it. Thank you, Gabriel. Like that, you know. So this justice, John Marshall Harlan, I wonder who he's named after, like that. So he says that the Constitution should be colorblind, right? And he says this decision, mark my word, will almost be worse than this Scott versus Sanford decision, right? But he's the only one, right? This is again, we're leading to, and I've said this word before. Hopefully, you learn this vocabulary. We're leading to the low point, the nadir, NADIR of really, you know, African American equality or civil rights. It's really a low point. I kind of want to just give you a picture of Jim Crow. Like, I know there are laws, but there's customs too. I know everybody gets all uneasy when I talk about this. Like, Mr. Price is 10,000 years ago. You know, we all love one another. Like, you know, what does that have to do with today? Well, I mean, it's because it's a people living under these types of customs. Here are some of the customs right here. Do not laugh in an insulting way at a white person. Do not ever say that you're superior in intelligence to a white person. Do not, when you disagree with a white person or you want their attention, look them in the eye. All right. So I'm saying these are the customs that you do. Right? Do not give a compliment to a white female. And a lot of you are like, oh, well, I don't know, what's the big deal? Like that. Well, here's the big deal. It can get you killed. All right. Assaulted. That's what's going on. All right. That is what is going on in so many parts of the South and other parts of the country too as well. It's like, you know, and I always say this. A lot of you guys saying like, you know, that's 10,000 years ago, no effect. What's the big deal? Mr. Price is exaggerating. Yeah, right. Again, investigate for yourself about some of the times here. Just investigate for yourself all that counts. All right, here. All right, you're talking about, somebody asked about the definition of lynching, like, you know, again, this execution of an accused person without trial or due process. That's what lynching is. All right. From 1890 to 1917, you have about an average about like, you know, 2 to 3 African Americans being lynched a week. All right. It is, but let's forget about it because nobody wants to like put it in context of this and everything. You know, nobody wants to. Makes everybody like, you know, again, like, you know, feeling these, oh, well, let me like, you know, let's do something else. Can't wait till we get to World War I or something like that. So, you know, but it's just part of our history, but people don't understand it. History always gives me a context about, you know, the country and what, you know, historically has happened. Why are people feeling this way? Why do we get the 3 main players that's going to come up here that you guys need to know for tomorrow, right? The 3 main players that you definitely have to know for tomorrow. And speaking of which, you have the Plessy versus Ferguson decision. Congress is a little bit upset. The Republicans, once again at the time, and at this time the Republicans are somewhat civil rights, but they already know they're growing tired of that. They're more worried about making money, business, and things of that nature. They call a prominent African American leader to Congress to testify about what do you think about Plessy versus Ferguson. And it's Booker T. Washington. Now, what do you think is Booker T. Washington's, if one or two of you already kind of studied or read, reply to Plessy versus Ferguson? What does he see about this decision? Go ahead, Faith. Yes. Yes. Economics. He says we must become independent. All right. We must become independent. He had two things about him saying we must work hard. We don't need to live with whites. We don't need to shop where whites are. We'll build our own communities. We'll build our own schools like that. We need not worry about Shakespeare and Edgar Allan Poe. All right. So we do not need to worry about it. We need to work. So it's all right, it's separate. And by the way, what he was thinking, his mentality was that I don't even think there's some whites that he's kind of encountered would ever want us to live around them or shop around them or be around them. So, but that does not mean we cannot persist. Cast down your bucket where you live. He was trying to tell African Americans not to leave the South, stay in the South. You know, this is what you do: discipline and dignity. Right? And I'm keep telling you that you guys want to say, I know you know all the Black All Stars, but it's funny that you guys never know really Booker T. Washington. And I'm just going to tell you, I know you don't believe this, probably the most influential African American leader up until probably like Martin Luther King, right? Probably the most influential. I mean, people would have pictures of him. They would even talk about the Tuskegee Machine. What's Tuskegee Institute? Hampton Institute at Hampton. So he got that educated. Now he called it the industrial arts, which you guys might know today is more like they still don't even. I don't even think they call it now. And now they kind of call it something else. But like what we used to call vocational school, some kinds of practical jobs for that. Why should like a Jamin go learn about humanities and poetry when he should be learning carpentry? You know, janitorial work, farming. That's what you should be doing. Right? Now, when I was growing up, as I've said all this about Booker T. Washington, and he says, 1895 is a significant date because that's when he made at this Atlanta exposition, this cotton and trade show. He makes a speech and he says, we can be as separate as fingers on the hand, but one and the same in you know uh, moving towards economic progress. So he's basically settling for pleasant and separation. You know? Now here's the thing: so a young, naive Mr. Price back there with the woolly mammoths and all the mastodons going to school. What did a young and naive and very ignorant Mr. Price think of probably Booker T. Washington when I heard teachers I'm reading about him? What did I think of since I was cool? Knowing what I just told you about Booker T. Washington. What do you think, Christian? Thank you. He's what we used to call an Uncle Tom. By the way, where is that from? Uncle Tom. Just even though you might not know what that kind of means. Uncle Tom's Cabin. He's like, well, sir, I just want to just learn, you know, just I'm humble. Once again, like that, I don't know too much, but I tell you this right now, I can definitely like, learn to cook and clean, learn to like, make sure that like, fix things. That's my caricature of what Booker T. Washington, I think Booker T. Washington was for. Definitely much deeper than that, as I found out, because I mean, when I'm there at Witherspoon and there the art gallery and there's Booker T. Washington there saying like one of the most famous sayings, and it just always sticks with me. Like when you lift somebody else up, you lift yourself up, and he's trying to do that. Easy for Mr. Price, as Christians probably imagine with my hair all wild, thinking I'm cool too, like that, and think and thinking that like hey, he's a sellout, like that, he's not doing the things that like say he should be more rebellious, he should be speaking up. Very easy, in my position. Here's the thing: is where is Tuskegee Institute located? Alabama, rural Alabama. What would prevent rural whites or any whites coming in there to burn that whole place down and start shooting African American, you know, females, males, young people? What would prevent that? Would anything prevent that? If, on an excuse? No. It's like it's easy for his so-called person who's contrarian, to make those kind of like accusations on Mr. Price. He's trying to say build up an economic base first. He does a lot of positive things. I'll tell you something about it. Again, he writes a book in 1901, Up from Slavery. All right, so that's one, and he has street cred if you want to say that because he was born a slave. He didn't spend too long in slavery. Talking about like 12 years, like again everything where he's kind of like freedom after the Civil War. But he produced that book. He helped, kind of develop Tuskegee Institute. Everybody has this name. They found it. He also, all right, starts this thing called like the National Negro Business League. He creates a he creates an endowment that's about worth in 1900 about 1.5 million dollars. He helps get land grants for HBCs, historically black colleges. He also puts a lot of money into newspapers too, as well, like black newspapers. And that's very much. I know you guys understand newspaper is the medium for communication and for like what stories are happening, and it is the black press. Okay, you have Booker T. Washington. Everybody loves to put the other guy against him. They're actually more in common. Everybody loves. I love one of my former students coming back and saying, Mr. President, I have to talk with you. I really had to call out my professor. They're like, Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King, like I say again. And she was trying to tell them, like, they were like 98% like agreed with each other, But everybody loves to pit that. I'd say, well, this one and that one, W.B. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington. Really didn't say anything about Booker T. Washington except a couple of times. And one was in a book, and one I think was for his eulogy. Like again, when Booker T. Washington died, like in 1915. All right. But this is the only times. But you would think in any type of blurb, any type of internet studies, you think they're going at each other. W.B. Du Bois just despises Booker T. Washington. Matter of fact, in the 1890s, pretty much in agreement. And I'm telling you, Booker T. Washington is the man. Right? I mean, president invites you to the White House, 1901, to sit there, even though he might call it lunch later, for dinner, and he say, hey, I'm going to also use you as an advisor. That is big. That is really big. What does W.E.B. Du Bois say that Booker T. Washington, though, is there's three things that you're not, you're denying African Americans that we should have. All right. And I'm going to list those, and then you're probably going to see them again because I like these because you need to know the counters. You should always have some kind of specifics for your arguments. Three things. One, voting. Because Booker T. Washington is not going to fight for or to get the kind of re-enfranchisement or to get the franchise. I'm like, well, we'll worry about that like later. That's going to come later because we have to prove ourselves almost in a way. And W.B. Du Bois says, he got a degree from Harvard, the first African American to do that. So he's thinking like, hey, like again, so why can't I be, Second thing, civic equality. That means why should I have to like fear for my life if I look at a white man in the eyes or if I bump into a white woman? Why should I be arrested if I did not know I cannot go into that store? He's just saying, I don't understand it. He's actually saying, I don't think, just like, John Marshall Harlan in the Constitution, it didn't say black or white. And then it's talking about natural rights that all men are born with those. Am I not a man? It's almost the abolitionist, like, kind of like, slogan. Think about that. Civic equality. Third thing, all right, and this is probably what goes up his alley, you know, you not only like say, civic equality, right to vote, but you deny opportunities for higher education. And actually, just a decent education, you want to put it in that time, because you know what kind of education. By the way, some of the Jim Crow laws, if you teach an integrated class, you could be fined or arrested. So, what W.B. Du Bois saying, wait a minute, I was not born because of my skin color with an impaired brain. So I should have an opportunity to go to some of the higher institutions and to get this, Mr. Washington. That's all I'm saying. We're worth more than just labor. So that's why it's kind of compared and contrasted. By the way, Washington had his other critics. He had this guy, William Trotter. You don't have to know his name. You don't care about him. You don't worry about the All Stars. So, who actually just really go to Washington's like speeches. And by the way, Washington is a great speaker. If you had your choice too, who you want to like listen to, the intellectual W.B. Du Bois or Booker T. Washington, come on, please. Don't tie me down. You could have to force me to listen to W.B. Du Bois. I want to hear Booker T. Washington like that. You know, great order. Somebody had a hand up or something like that. Yes, please.
So is he saying that Washington's just having like schools for African Americans specifically is denying people opportunities, or does he think like
Yes. What is his school? What is Tuskegee Institute, Hampton Institute? What does he think that like most majors should be in?
oh so
You get it? The industrial arts.
right, okay, that
Now,
makes
here's what W.B. Du Bois is saying. If my son would have lived, why can't they be a doctor? Like that. It's like, why can't, again, about this, why can't they move it? Why can't they be professional? Why can't they get, why can't, nothing wrong, and W.B. Du Bois said, nothing wrong with black colleges, but why can't I get the best education they can get if you can afford it and pay for it? Things we take for granted today. Everybody's thinking like, oh man, like Mr. Price, I'm so glad. Like there's no prejudice today, no racism. It's 2018, like that. So, but that's what he was saying. So that's why a lot of times they're pitted against each other. But I want you to know in reality, they're not really butting heads. Washington never says anything disparagingly about W.B. Du Bois. He said, I've heard of him. I heard he had some good things to say about this. But they're just kind of compared and contrasted, especially when he does have a chapter on Washington. Like, I need to address that. I don't think all of Washington, what his the way to like equality is the best way. Right there at this time. That's what all he's saying. Now, just with 1 minute left, and by the way, just another thing about W.B. Du Bois, Niagara Movement 1905, what's the big organization in 1909? NAACP. And everybody always asks about colored people, like color, that's what they call people with black back then. He was saying that let's use the word colored, not to just include what? People of what? Where? In America. He was thinking about Pan Africanism before the 1960s. He's thinking about, hey, this is going to be a worldwide, brotherhood movement. Again, a lot of people always consider themselves a minority. You look yourselves around the world, you're not a minority. There's only in certain places that you're a minority in here, but a lot of places you're in the majority. And he said, like, Pan Africanism. And a third person before I go, I think there was a question in there that I'll get to beginning like tomorrow. Who's that third person? Yeah, I'd be one, and I'm telling you, probably one of the. I do not know. I mean, she should be in that pantheon of this like civil rights right there because she will always be up for protests, doing stuff, questioning things. In the newspaper, I have to say this newspaper, she even questions the word darky. Even for back then, they used that word in the newspaper. And now today, you guys, you get fired or get, whatever, or get reprimanded if you use it. Back then, it was just complex. She questioned it back then. Like that. So I am like again. I protest you using that word like to describe this. This Negro man to be called like dark and so like. And I'm telling you, she would not be quiet. And I told you, I love the story, Christian. She's on that. In Memphis. She's going somewhere to teach. She's in there like where the white women, like are sitting, and they say, "No, you got to move," and she bites his hand when she tries to like. But I'll say no, and she wins her case initially and gets $500, but then it's going to be reversed. And I'm just saying that's just part of it. But we'll talk more about it tomorrow. I want to let you guys go. Was there something kind of lingering though? Thought somebody maybe you got your question answered before. All right, all right. Take it easy. I'm saying everything. Take it easy.